Captain Jake Morrison stared at the encrypted message on his screen for the third time that morning. The words made his heart race with excitement and fear. A crashed alien ship had been detected on the edge of the Vorthen Nebula, and the automated probe that found it had sent back some very strange readings before going silent. The Vorthen Nebula was off limits to everyone in the galaxy. For over 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had kept a strict quarantine around the massive swirling cloud of cosmic storms and twisted space. Every species in the galaxy knew the stories about what lived inside that nebula. The void. Devourers were creatures of pure nightmare, massive beings made of shadow and stolen energy that consumed entire fleets without leaving so much as debris behind. Jake looked around the bridge of his ship, a frontier spirit. His crew was small but capable. Lisa Parker, his chief engineer, was running diagnostics on the engines. She was tough and smart, the kind of person who could fix anything with spare parts and determination. Dr. Sam Rodriguez sat at his science station, studying star charts with the focused intensity that made him one of Earth's best xenobiologists. Kelly Brooks, their communications officer, was monitoring the usual chatter from nearby systems, her fingers dancing across her console with practiced ease. They were supposed to be on a routine mapping mission in this sector, cataloging new star systems for Earth's growing colonial program. It was boring work, but it paid well and kept them far from the political mess back home. Jake had been doing this kind of work for 5 years now, ever since he left the Earth Defense Force. He liked the freedom of exploration, even if it meant dealing with the Galactic Council's endless bureaucracy. But this message changed everything. The crashed ship was Zephyrian, according to the probe's readings. The Zephyrians were one of the oldest and most advanced species in the galaxy. What had they been doing so close to the Forbidden Zone? And more importantly, why had their ship crashed? Jake made his decision quickly. He had always been the type to act first and ask for forgiveness later. It had gotten him in trouble with his superiors more than once, but it had also saved his crew's odds on several occasions. "Lisa, how long would it take us to reach the edge of the Vorthen Nebula?" he asked. Lisa looked up from her console with surprise. "About 6 hours at full speed. But Jake, you know that area is off limits. The Galactic Council has ships patrolling the quarantine zone." "I know," Jake replied. "But there might be survivors on that Zephyrian ship. We can't just ignore a distress signal." Dar Rodriguez turned in his chair. "There wasn't a distress signal, Jake. Just the automated readings from our probe before it went dark." "Same thing," Jake said firmly. "Kelly, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we're investigating a potential rescue situation. Don't mention the nebula specifically." Kelly hesitated for a moment, then began typing. She had learned to trust Jake's instincts over the years, even when they seemed crazy. The journey to the nebula's edge took exactly 6 hours and 12 minutes. As they approached, the view on their main screen became increasingly unsettling. The Vorthen Nebula was unlike anything else in known space. Instead of the beautiful colors of normal nebulae, this one was a swirling mass of deep purples and blacks, with occasional flashes of sickly green light deep within its core. Space itself seemed twisted around its edges, creating optical illusions. That hurt to look at directly. "I'm picking up the wreckage," Lisa reported. "It's about 2 kilometers from the nebula's outer boundary. The ship is badly damaged, but I'm reading some kind of power signature. Could be emergency systems. Any life signs?" Jake asked. Dr. Rodriguez checked his sensors carefully. "One very weak signal. Zephyrian physiology, but barely alive." Jake didn't hesitate. "Take us in, Lisa. Standard rescue approach." The Zephyrian research vessel had been torn apart by something massive. Hull plates were scattered across several hundred meters of space, and the main section of the ship looked like it had been crushed by an enormous hand. Only the emergency section remained intact, its weak power systems keeping a small atmosphere bubble stable. The rescue took 20 minutes. They found the sole survivor in the ship's science lab, a Zephian scientist named Cathvar, who was barely conscious. His blue-gray skin had turned almost white from blood loss, and one of his forearms was completely crushed. Tia Rodriguez worked frantically to stabilize him while Jake and Kelly searched the wreckage for clues about what had happened. The ship's logs were mostly corrupted, but Kelly managed to recover some fragments. The Zephyrians had been studying something they called dimensional anomalies near the nebula. Their final log entry was just 3 words repeated over and over. They're coming out. Cathvar regained consciousness just long enough to grab Jake's arm with his remaining good hand. His large black eyes were filled with terror as he struggled to speak in broken Standard Galactic. "The feeders," he whispered. "The hungry ones. They felt us studying them. They don't like to be watched." "What feeders?" Jake asked gently. "What are you talking about?" "Void devourers," Cathvar managed to say. "Ancient ones, hungrier than ever. They're coming." The Zephyrian scientist died moments later, leaving Jake and his crew with more questions than answers. But they didn't have long to wonder. Kelly's sensors began screaming warnings as 3 massive contacts appeared on their screens, emerging from the depths of the nebula like sharks rising from dark water at the void. Devourers were nothing like the descriptions Jake had heard. Instead of solid creatures, they appeared to be living shadows the size of small moons, their forms constantly shifting and crackling with stolen energy. Streams of blue and white light flowed across their surfaces like veins, and Jake could see the twisted remains of dozens of ships embedded in their dark flesh. "Emergency power to engines," Jake ordered, his voice steady despite the fear churning in his stomach. "Prepare for emergency jump to hyperspace." But something strange happened. The 3 creatures approached the frontier spirits slowly, almost cautiously. Instead of attacking immediately, like every story said they would, they seemed to be studying the human ship. One of them extended what might have been a tentacle made of pure energy, stopping just short of touching their hull. "They're not attacking," Lisa said in amazement. "Why aren't they attacking?" Kelly stared at her sensor readings in confusion. "I'm picking up some kind of electromagnetic pattern from them. It's almost like they're trying to communicate." Jake felt his heart pounding as he watched the massive creatures circle his ship. Every instinct told him to run, but something else, something deeper, told him to wait. These beings had destroyed countless ships over thousands of years, but they hadn't destroyed his. There had to be a reason. "Hold position," he ordered quietly. "Let's see what they want." The largest of the 3 void devourers moved closer, its form pulsing with what Jake could only describe as curiosity. For the first time in galactic history, humans had encountered the legendary monsters of the Vorthan Nebula and lived to tell about it. But Jake had a feeling their survival was just the beginning of something much bigger. As the creatures continued their strange dance around his ship, Jake realized that everything the galaxy thought it knew about the Void Devourers might be completely wrong. Dr. Sam Rodriguez had been staring at his sensor readings for 2 hours straight, and he still couldn't believe what he was seeing. The 3 Void Devourers continued to circle the frontier spirit, but their behavior was unlike anything in the historical records. Instead of the mindless aggression described in every encounter report, these creatures seemed genuinely curious about the human ship. "Jake, you need to see this," Sam called out, his voice filled with excitement. "I've been analyzing the energy patterns from these creatures, and they're not random. There's a definite structure to them, almost like language patterns." Captain Morrison moved to the science station, followed by Lisa and Kelly. The screen showed complex waveforms that pulsed and shifted in seemingly chaotic patterns. But Sam had highlighted certain recurring sequences. "Look at this," Sam continued, pointing to specific sections of the data. "This pattern repeats every few minutes, but with slight variations. And this one here appears whenever one of the creatures moves closer to our ship. I think they're trying to communicate with us." Kelly leaned forward, studying the patterns with professional interest. As the ship's communications officer, she had experience with dozens of alien languages and communication methods. "The variations in the first pattern remind me of emotional modifiers in Andromedan speech. If Sam is right, they might be expressing basic concepts or feelings." Lisa crossed her arms skeptically. "Or it could just be random energy discharge. These things have been eating ships for thousands of years. Why would they suddenly want to chat?" Jake watched the three massive creatures through the view screen. One of them had positioned itself directly in front of their ship, its dark form pulsing with slow, rhythmic flashes of blue light. What if they've been trying to communicate all along, but nobody ever survived long enough to figure it out? Sam's eyes lit up. That would make sense. Every previous encounter ended in destruction within minutes. We're the first crew to survive long enough to study their behavior patterns. Over the next several hours, Kelly worked tirelessly to decode the electromagnetic signals coming from the Void Devourers. She used every translation algorithm in the ship's computer, comparing the patterns to known languages and mathematical concepts. Slowly, patterns began to emerge. "I think I've got something," Kelly announced after her sixth straight hour of work. "The basic pattern seems to represent a concept similar to need or want. When it's combined with this secondary pattern, it changes to something more like hunger or emptiness." Sam nodded eagerly. "That matches what I'm seeing in their energy readings. These creatures are constantly absorbing and processing energy, but their internal energy levels are actually very low. They might be starving." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Starving? But they've been feeding on ships for millennia. "Ships don't provide much energy compared to their size," Sam explained. "Think about it. A starship's power core might seem massive to us, but to creatures this large, it would be like eating a single grain of rice. They might be destroying entire fleets just to get enough energy to survive." The implications hit everyone at once. The Void Devourers weren't malevolent destroyers. They were desperately hungry beings who had been feeding on the only energy source they could find in this region of space. "Can we communicate with them?" Jake asked. "Let them know we understand?" Kelly had been thinking the same thing. She had modified the ship's communications array to broadcast on the same electromagnetic frequencies the creatures were using. "I can try to send basic concepts back to them. It's risky, though. We don't know how they'll react." Jake made the decision. Quickly. Do it. Kelly's first attempt was simple. She broadcast the pattern they had identified as hunger back to the creatures, followed by a pattern that she hoped would represent understanding or acknowledgement. The response was immediate and dramatic. All three Void Devourers stopped, moving and pulsed with bright flashes of light. The largest one moved even closer to their ship, its energy patterns shifting to something that felt almost like excitement. "It worked," Kelly breathed. "They know we're trying to talk to them." Over the next few hours, a primitive but effective communication system began to develop. The creatures were clearly intelligent, perhaps more so than many species in the Galactic Council. They began sharing concepts that Kelly translated as loneliness, pain, and most heartbreakingly, forgotten. Sam made another crucial discovery while monitoring their energy signatures. "Jake, I think I know why they haven't attacked us. Our ship's energy signature is different from other species. Human technology uses a specific type of fusion reaction. That produces a cleaner energy pattern. It might be more appealing to them, or easier to process." "So they see us as better food?" Lisa asked dryly. No, I think it's the opposite, Sam replied. I think our energy is so much cleaner that they don't need to destroy us to feed. They could potentially feed on our excess energy output without harming us. Jake stared at the doctor in amazement. Are you suggesting we could actually feed these creatures? It's possible, Sam said carefully. Our ship's power core produces more energy than we typically use. If we could modify our output systems to provide a steady stream of excess energy, we might be able to sustain one of these creatures without any danger to ourselves. Lisa looked at him like he had lost his mind. You want to turn our ship into a food truck for cosmic monsters? They're not monsters, Kelly said firmly. They're just hungry and lonely. They've been alone in that nebula for who knows how long, with no one to talk to and nothing to eat except the occasional ship that wanders too close. Jake felt a plan forming in his mind. It was crazy, dangerous, and would probably get him court-martialed if Earth Command ever found out. But it might also be the most important thing humanity had ever done. Lisa, how long would it take you to modify our energy output systems? He asked. Lisa sighed, recognizing the determined look in his captain's eyes. Give me 4 hours and I can create a controlled energy feed system. But Jake, if this goes wrong, we're all going to end up as cosmic appetizers. If we don't try, these creatures will keep destroying ships for the next 1,000 years, Jake replied. And everyone in the galaxy will keep thinking they're mindless killers instead of intelligent beings who are just trying to survive. Lisa began her modifications and Kelly continued refining their communication system. Sam made one more disturbing discovery. Long-range sensors were detecting a massive fleet approaching their position. The Galactic Council had finally noticed their unauthorized mission into the Forbidden Zone. We've got company coming, Sam announced. 47 ships, mixed species fleet. They'll be here in 6 hours. Jake felt his stomach drop. A Galactic Council fleet would arrive expecting to find debris and dead humans. Instead, they would find the frontier spirit having a peaceful conversation with 3 void devourers. The Council's response would be swift and violent. How long until Lisa's modifications are complete? Jake asked. 3 more hours, Lisa called from the engineering console. And how long until we can establish stable communication? Jake asked Kelly. Maybe 2 hours for basic concepts, Kelly replied. Jake did the math quickly. They would have 1 hour to prove to 3 ancient, powerful beings that humans could be trusted before a Galactic Council fleet arrived to destroy everything. It would have to be enough. As the largest void devourer moved closer to their ship, its energy patterns shifting to something that felt almost like hope, Jake realized that the next few hours would determine not just the fate of his crew, but possibly the future of human-alien relations throughout the galaxy. The first feeding session between humans and a void devourer was the most terrifying and beautiful thing Jake Morrison had ever witnessed. Lisa had completed her modifications to the ship's energy systems with 30 minutes to spare before the Galactic Council fleet arrived. The largest creature, which Kelly had started calling Echo because of its habit of repeating their communication patterns, approached the frontier spirit with what could only be described as careful excitement. Lisa activated the energy feed. From the engineering console, her hands shaking slightly. Energy flow is stable. We're providing about 15% of our total output, well within safe parameters. Echo extended a tendril of pure energy toward their ship, moving slowly as if afraid of frightening them. When the connection was made, the creature's entire form pulsed with waves of blue and white light. For the first time in Jake's memory, the dark shadow that was Echo seemed less threatening and more like a living being experiencing joy. Look at its energy readings, Sam said in amazement. Its internal power levels are rising steadily, but more than that, the chaotic patterns in its neural energy are stabilizing. It's not just feeding, it's healing. Kelly monitored the communication frequencies as Echo fed. The creature's electromagnetic patterns shifted to concepts she was learning to recognize as gratitude, relief, and something that felt remarkably like friendship. "It's trying to tell us something new," she said. "I think it's explaining about the others, about its companions." The feeding session lasted 20 minutes. When Echo disconnected from their energy feed, it moved back to join the other two creatures, and Jake could see them communicating with rapid exchanges of light and electromagnetic pulses. Whatever Echo was telling them, it was causing great excitement. "Captain," Lisa announced from her station, "I'm detecting a massive hyperspace disturbance. The Galactic Council fleet is about to drop out of jump." Jake took a deep breath and prepared for the most difficult conversation of his career. "Kelly, open a channel to the incoming fleet as soon as they arrive. Sam, make sure all our sensor data is backed up and ready to transmit. If this goes badly, someone needs to know what we discovered here." The Galactic Council fleet materialized in a perfect attack formation, 47 ships from a dozen different species arranged in a sphere around the Frontier Spirit and the 3 Void Devourers. Jake recognized the flagship immediately. The massive Centaurian battlecruiser Stellar Pride was Admiral Tisara's command ship, and her reputation for following regulations was legendary throughout the galaxy. "Human vessel Frontier Spirit," came the Admiral's voice over the communication channel, her words translated by the universal language processors. "You are ordered to withdraw immediately from the quarantine zone. Prepare for emergency evacuation before we engage the hostile entities." Jake activated his own transmitter. "Admiral Tisara, this is Captain Morrison. I need to inform you that these entities are not hostile. We have established communication with them, and they pose no threat to our vessels." The silence that followed lasted almost 30 seconds. When Admiral Tisara responded, her voice carried a mixture of disbelief and anger. "Captain Morrison, your ship should have been destroyed hours ago. These creatures have annihilated every vessel that has entered this region for over 3,000 years. You are clearly under some form of alien influence or mind control." "We are not under any form of control," Jake replied firmly. "These beings are intelligent and were simply trying to survive. They've been feeding on starships because they had no other energy source available. We've successfully provided them with energy without any harm to our vessel or crew." Ambassador Vextol of the Andromedans joined the conversation, his synthesized voice carrying the authority of one of the galaxy's oldest species. "Human captain, your species is young and lacks understanding of the true danger these creatures represent. The Void Devourers are weapons of destruction left over from the ancient wars. They cannot be reasoned with or controlled." High Commander Zorak of the Krillian Empire added his own harsh assessment. "The human vessel has clearly been compromised. We should destroy all 4 targets immediately before this contamination spreads." Jake felt anger rising in his chest, but he forced himself to remain calm. "With respect, Admiral, Ambassador, Commander, you're making assumptions based on incomplete information. D.R. Rodriguez, please transmit our sensor data to the fleet." Sam sent a compressed data package containing hours of recordings showing the Void Devourers' communication attempts, their feeding behavior, and their obvious intelligence. The response from the Galactic Council representatives was predictable. "Fabricated data," Ambassador Vextol declared immediately. "No species has ever successfully communicated with these entities." "Because no one ever tried," Kelly broke in. On the channel, every previous expedition came in with weapons ready and hostile intentions. These creatures responded to aggression with aggression. We approached them as potential allies, not enemies. Admiral Tisara's patience was clearly running out. "Enough discussion. All vessels prepare to engage targets." The contaminated human ship will be destroyed along with the hostile entities. That was when Echo and its companions did something that changed everything. Instead of responding to the obvious threat with violence, the three Void Devourers moved to form a protective barrier around the frontier spirit. But more importantly, they began broadcasting on every communication frequency simultaneously. Transmission was mathematical, starting with simple number sequences and quickly building to complex equations. Kelly worked frantically to decode the patterns while the Galactic Council fleet hesitated, uncertain how to respond to this unexpected development. "They're sharing technology," Kelly announced in amazement. "Advanced dimensional physics, energy, manipulation techniques, faster-than-light travel calculations that are centuries beyond anything in our databases." Dr. Rodriguez was studying the data as it came in. "This is incredible. They're offering to share knowledge that could revolutionize space travel for every species in the galaxy. These equations could make our current jump drives look like primitive rockets." Echo sent a direct communication to the frontier spirit, which Kelly translated for everyone to hear. "The hungry ones say they want to help the small flying ones. They have been alone for too long and wish to be friends with all who travel the star paths." Lisa monitored the energy signatures from the Galactic Council fleet and detected something concerning. "Jake, several of those ships are charging weapons. I don't think they care about the technology transfer." High Commander Zorak's voice cut through the communication channels with military precision. "This is clearly a trap. The creatures are attempting to lure us into lowering our defenses. All ships, target the largest entity and prepare to fire on my command." Jake felt desperation rising in his chest. "Admiral, please, give us a chance to prove what we've discovered. These beings could become humanity's greatest allies, and the galaxy's as well." "The decision has been made," Admiral Tessara replied coldly. "The threat will be eliminated." But Echo and its companions had apparently understood the hostile intentions of the fleet. Instead of preparing for battle, they did something that shocked every military commander present. They began to retreat slowly toward the nebula while continuing to broadcast their mathematical gift to the galaxy. Largest creature, Echo, sent one final communication to the frontier spirit. Kelly's translation came through clearly. "The hungry ones understand. The small flying ones with gentle energy are different from the others. If the gentle ones wish to learn more, the hungry ones will wait in the deep dark." As the three Void Devourers disappeared back into the depths of the Vorthen Nebula, Jake realized that his crew had just witnessed the first contact between the galaxy's most feared creatures and any spacefaring species. But he also knew that the Galactic Council's response would determine whether this breakthrough led to a new era of cooperation or became just another classified incident buried in military files. "Admiral, Tessara's final transmission was curt and professional. Human vessel Frontier Spirit, you will accompany our fleet back to Council Station 7 for debriefing. Your unauthorized actions in the quarantine zone will be subject to full investigation." As the Frontier Spirit fell into formation with the Galactic Council fleet, Jake looked back at the swirling darkness of the Vorthen Nebula and wondered if he would ever see his new friends again. The debriefing at Council Station 7 lasted 3 weeks and almost ended Jake's career. Admiral Tessara and the other Galactic Council representatives questioned every decision he had made, analyzed every piece of sensor data, and subjected his entire crew to extensive psychological evaluations to ensure they hadn't been compromised by alien influence. But the mathematical equations that Echo had transmitted were impossible to ignore. Scientists from dozens of species worked around the clock to verify the dimensional physics calculations, and every analysis confirmed the same stunning conclusion. The Void Devourers possessed technological knowledge that was thousands of years ahead of anything in the Galactic Council's databases. Dr. Sam Rodriguez found himself at the center of a scientific revolution. His research on the creature's biology and communication methods became required reading for xenobiologists throughout the galaxy. These beings aren't just intelligent, he explained to a packed auditorium of council scientists. They're master engineers of dimensional space itself. They've been using their abilities to survive in our universe, despite being originally from a completely different dimensional framework. Kelly Brooks became the galaxy's first certified expert in void devourer communication, though she preferred to call them by the name Echo had suggested, the Wanderers. They call themselves the Wanderers because they've been searching for a new home ever since their original dimension collapsed eons ago, she explained to the linguistic analysis team. They've been trapped in our space-time for so long that they've forgotten how to return to dimensional space where they belong. The breakthrough came when Lisa Parker proposed something that made the entire Galactic Council nervous. If we're going to work with these beings, she argued during a heated engineering conference, we need to build proper facilities for them. Not weapons or containment systems, but actual partnership infrastructure. Jake had been promoted to Special Advisor on Xenological Relations, a newly created position that basically meant the Council didn't know what to do with him, but couldn't ignore his success. He used his new authority to propose the Wanderer Integration Project, a plan to establish the galaxy's first cooperative relationship with the creatures everyone had feared for millennia. The pilot program began 6 months after the initial contact. Jake returned to the Vorthan Nebula aboard a specially modified research vessel called the New Horizon, accompanied by a small team of volunteers from Earth and a very nervous group of observers from the Galactic Council. Echo and its companions emerged from the nebula's depths as soon as the New Horizon arrived, their massive forms pulsing with what Kelly now recognized as excitement and hope. The reunion was emotional in ways that surprised everyone involved. They remember us, Kelly said with tears in her eyes as Echo's communication patterns flooded their receivers with concepts of joy, friendship, and gratitude. They've been waiting for us to come back. The first cooperative project was the construction of a permanent feeding station at the nebula's edge. Lisa worked directly with the Wanderers to design a facility that could provide sustainable energy while serving as a research and communication center. The result was unlike anything ever built in the galaxy. The station was a hybrid of human engineering and Wanderer dimensional technology. It floated in space like a crystalline flower, its multiple sections connected by streams of controlled energy that the Wanderers could feed from continuously. The central hub housed human research facilities, while the outer sections provided comfortable environments for the massive creatures. Dr. Rodriguez established the galaxy's first research program dedicated to studying interdimensional biology. Working directly with Echo, he learned that the Wanderers were originally energy-based life forms who had adapted to physical space out of necessity. They're not just visitors from another dimension, he explained in his reports. They're refugees who have been trying to find a way home for thousands of years. The most amazing discovery came when the Wanderers began sharing their knowledge of other species that the galaxy had written off as too dangerous to approach. Echo communicated about crystal entities in the Andromeda Spiral who are actually trying to establish trade relationships, and massive space-dwelling organisms in the Outer Rim who are desperately seeking help with the plague that was destroying their breeding grounds. The galaxy is full of misunderstood species, Jake realized during one of his regular communication sessions with Echo. We've been so focused on protecting ourselves that we never considered some of these monsters might just be looking for friends. The success of the Wanderer Integration Project couldn't be hidden from the rest of the galaxy. Within a year, the feeding station had become a major hub of scientific research and technological development. The Wanderers' dimensional manipulation abilities allowed them to create stable wormholes that revolutionized space travel, reducing journey times between distant systems from months to days. Lisa found herself leading a new branch of engineering that combined human innovation with Wanderer dimensional technology. The first ships equipped with hybrid drive systems could travel faster and more efficiently than anything previously imagined. It's not just about speed, she explained to impressed council engineers. It's about understanding space itself in this completely new ways. Kelly's communication protocols became the foundation for establishing contact with other previously hostile species. The Wanderers acted as intermediaries, using their dimensional abilities to safely approach creatures that had been avoiding galactic civilization for centuries. Each successful contact revealed another species that had been misunderstood rather than truly dangerous. The transformation of the Vorthan Nebula from a forbidden zone to the galaxy's most advanced research center took less than 2 years. Human-designed facilities worked in harmony with Wanderer dimensional technology to create laboratories and meeting spaces that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time. Jake often stood on the observation deck of the main research station, watching as Wanderers moved gracefully between the energy-feeding arrays and human work crews collaborated with beings that had once been considered the galaxy's greatest threat. The sight never failed to amaze him. Echo had become something like a friend, though Jake wasn't sure if friendship was the right word for the relationship between a human and a creature the size of a small moon. Their communication sessions had evolved from basic concepts to complex, philosophical discussions about the nature of existence, the purpose of intelligence, and the possibility of finding ways for different forms of life to coexist peacefully. Galactic Council formally recognized the success of the Wanderer Integration Project with the signing of the Vorthan Accords, a treaty that established humans as official mediators between the Council and uncontactable species. Jake received a commendation for services to galactic peace, though he suspected the Council was still nervous about the precedent he had set. But the most important moment came during a private communication session between Jake and Echo, when the massive creature shared something that changed his understanding of what they had accomplished. The gentle flying ones have given the Wanderers something more valuable than energy. Echo's patterns translated through Kelly's systems. The gentle ones have given the Wanderers hope that the galaxy contains friendship instead of only fear. As Jake watched 3 more Wanderers emerge from the nebula's depths, drawn by the success of the integration project, he realized that this was just the beginning. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, other misunderstood species were waiting for someone brave enough to try communication instead of weapons, partnership instead of destruction. The Galactic Council might have been shocked by humanity's success with the Wanderers, but Jake suspected they had no idea how many other impossible partnerships were waiting to be discovered among the stars. 2 years after first contact with the Wanderers, Jake Morrison stood on the command deck of the most advanced starship in the galaxy and smiled at the impossible sight before him. The Frontier Spirit had been completely rebuilt using hybrid human Wanderer technology, and its new capabilities still amazed him every day. Through the main view screen, he watched as Echo guided a group of newly arrived Wanderers through their first feeding session at the expanded Vorthan Research Complex. The complex itself had grown beyond anyone's original plans. What started as a single feeding station had evolved into a sprawling network of research facilities, diplomatic centers, and cultural exchange hubs. Ships from dozens of species arrived daily, bringing scientists, diplomats, and curious visitors who wanted to witness the galaxy's first successful partnership with beings that had once been considered unstoppable killers. Dr. Sam Rodriguez had published 17 research papers on interdimensional biology and was widely considered the galaxy's leading expert on energy-based life forms. His latest project involved working with a group of young Wanderers who had never learned to fear other species, making them ideal ambassadors for establishing new contacts throughout the galaxy. "Jake, you need to see this," Sam called from his research station. "We just received a response from the crystalline entities in the Andromeda spiral. They're willing to meet with a human delegation." Kelly Brooks looked up from her expanded communication console, which now handled translation duties for over 40 different species, including several that had been completely unknown to the Galactic Council just 2 years earlier. A message came through the dimensional relay network the Wanderers established. "It's the clearest long-distance communication we've ever received from another galaxy." Lisa Parker emerged from the engineering section, her hands covered in the strange blue residue that always appeared when working with Wanderer dimensional technology. "The new drive system is ready for testing. If Echo's calculations are correct, we should be able to reach the Andromeda spiral in less than a week instead of the usual 6 months. Jake felt the familiar excitement that came with every new discovery. The partnership with the Wanderers had opened doors to possibilities that the galaxy had never imagined. But more importantly, it had proven that communication and cooperation could succeed where military force had always failed. The Galactic Council had initially been skeptical of the expanding program, but the practical benefits were impossible to ignore. Trade routes that had been considered too dangerous were now protected by Wanderer guides who could navigate through dimensional storms and spatial anomalies. Scientific research had advanced by centuries in just 2 years, thanks to the Wanderer's deep understanding of physics and energy manipulation. Ambassador Vextall, who had once argued for destroying the Wanderers, now served as the Council's official liaison to the integration program. His transformation from skeptic to supporter had been gradual but complete. "The humans have demonstrated something that our species never considered," he admitted during a recent council session. "They showed us that our greatest enemies might actually be our greatest potential allies." The success with the Wanderers had led to contact with 7 other previously hostile species, each one revealing a similar pattern of misunderstanding and fear. The crystal entities turned out to be living libraries, ancient beings who stored the knowledge of extinct civilizations in their crystalline matrices. The space-dwelling organisms that everyone thought were aggressive were actually trying to warn other species about dangerous areas of space where reality itself was unstable. Jake's new role as Director of Interspecies Relations kept him busier than he had ever imagined possible. Every week brought new requests from species that wanted human mediation in establishing contact with beings they had been avoiding for generations. The humans' reputation for successful first contact had spread throughout the galaxy, though Jake often wondered if they were just lucky or if there was something genuinely different about how humans approached the unknown. Echo had become not just a friend, but a trusted advisor who helped evaluate potential new contacts. The massive Wanderer had developed an almost parental fondness for humanity, often expressing concern about humans taking on too many dangerous missions at once. "Gentle flying ones have brave hearts but small bodies," Echo communicated during one of their regular strategy sessions. "The Wanderers worry that the gentle ones will wear themselves thin trying to help everyone in the Star Ocean." Kelly had learned to recognize the affectionate exasperation in Echo's energy patterns. She had developed such a close working relationship with the Wanderers that she sometimes seemed to understand their communications before her own translation systems finished processing them. "Echo's right, Jake. We're getting requests faster than we can handle them. Maybe it's time to start training other species in our contact protocols." The training program that resulted from this conversation became one of humanity's most important contributions to galactic civilization. Teams of human diplomats worked with volunteers from dozens of species, teaching the communication techniques and psychological approaches that had proven successful with the Wanderers and other previously hostile entities. Dr. Rodriguez established the first interspecies psychology program, studying how different species' evolutionary backgrounds affected their ability to approach unknown beings with curiosity rather than fear. Humans seem to have a unique combination of caution and curiosity, he explained to his mixed species classes. We're careful enough to survive dangerous encounters, but curious enough to keep trying to communicate even when initial attempts fail. Lisa's engineering teams had begun collaborating with the crystal entities to develop new technologies that combined human innovation, wanderer dimensional manipulation, and crystalline information storage. The result was a new class of starships that could travel between galaxies while maintaining constant communication with home bases through dimensional relay networks. The most significant breakthrough came when the Wanderers revealed the existence of what they called the Deep Listeners, massive entities that lived in the space between galaxies and served as a kind of cosmic communication network. These beings had been observing galactic civilizations for millions of years, waiting for species mature enough to handle contact with truly ancient intelligences. The Deep Listeners have been watching the star swimmers for longer than the Wanderers have existed, Echo explained during a communication session that included representatives from the Galactic Council. They have seen many young species grow and learn, but the gentle flying ones are the first to show kindness to the hungry ones. The Deep Listeners wish to meet those who choose friendship over fear. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not only made contact with previously hostile species within their own galaxy, but had apparently attracted the attention of cosmic entities that existed on a scale beyond anything previously imagined. Jake found himself preparing for the most important diplomatic mission in galactic history. The journey to meet the Deep Listeners would take the new frontier spirit beyond the edge of known space, into the vast emptiness between galaxies where these ancient beings waited. But first, there was one more development that changed everything. Kelly received a transmission that made her call for Jake immediately, her voice filled with excitement and wonder. "Jake, you need to hear this. We just got a message from the Outer Rim, from a species we've never encountered before. They're calling themselves the Architects, and they say they've been building something for the past 1,000,000 years. They want to meet with the humans who taught the Wanderers to sing again." As Jake listened to the translated message, he realized that the partnership with the Wanderers had set off a chain reaction throughout the galaxy. Species that had been hiding, waiting, or simply existing in isolation were suddenly reaching out, drawn by the example of successful cooperation between humans and beings that everyone else had feared. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session to discuss the implications of so many new contacts happening simultaneously. High Commander Zorak, who had once wanted to destroy the Wanderers immediately, now served as head of the Council's new Peaceful Contact Division. "The humans have fundamentally changed how we approach the unknown," he announced to the assembled representatives. "In 2 years, they have established positive relations with more previously hostile species than the rest of us managed in the previous 1,000 years combined." Admiral Tisara, now retired from military service and serving as an advisor to the integration programs, added her own assessment. "The humans didn't just tame the Wanderers. They proved that our definition of untamable was based on our own limitations, not the limitations of the species we were trying to avoid." Jake accepted the Council's formal recognition with mixed feelings. The success was gratifying, but he knew that it came with enormous responsibility. Humanity had become the galaxy's go-to species for impossible diplomatic situations, and that reputation would bring both opportunities and dangers.